And joining us now, this evening's political panel, Maura Gillespie is back with us, the founder principal, Blue Stack Strategies, our Republican strategist, alongside Democratic strategist Matt Bennett, Executive Vice President for Public Affairs at Third Way. Great to see both of you. Great to have you back in the conversation. Matt, you worked for a former Republican speaker. This is one with a much smaller majority than John Boehner certainly ever realized. Struggling to find a direction here on a congressional agenda, on a reconciliation plan. They've been down there for days. They were doing the water slide. They had dinner on the lawn, we're told. They've had lots of hours of golf. Has it made a difference?
This is one of the problems, too, I think, when you're a majority that is, trying to get a lot of things done, but you have a president who is really putting a heavy hand on the operations of Congress. And so there isn't an identity for Mike Johnson right now. I think he's echoing a lot of things that Trump has told him to be pushing, but not necessarily conferencing with the people he needs to make sure they're all on board. Because when you have such a slim majority, you have to make sure that your team is with you. And we saw some people that aren't there. Chip Roy's not there. There's a handful of others who are criticizing the fact that these policies aren't going to address the deficit. And for a lot of members on the far right flank, that's their number one priority. And it doesn't seem as though it's matching up right now.
And they want more cuts, of course.
More cuts. Absolutely.
So they won't return from Miami with a plan, is I think what you're saying. Is that right?
Will we have
one bill or two? Do we know?
Well, it'll regurgitate whatever Trump decides. Whatever he says right now is what they're going to do.
Okay.
And I don't know that goes the same for the Senate.
I don't care is kind of what he's saying, isn't it?
As long as he gets what he wants. And unfortunately, what he wants changes from 1 minute to the next. And I don't know that the Senate's going to be as in line with what Speaker Johnson is showing that he will be when it comes to Trump. But we'll see. I mean, really, unfortunately, when it comes to Donald Trump, it remains unknown until the votes are happening.
So, Matt, what's Democrats' role here? What's Hakeem Jeffries to do? Because I'm pretty sure a couple of Democratic votes will be needed if they do plow this all into one massive bill. And you're going to have things like wildfire relief in there to offset some concerns about, say, extending the Trump tax cuts. Is this going to work?
I don't know. I mean, eventually it's going to work. I don't think we're going to default on the debt, that we've threatened to do it a bunch of times. It would be insane. I don't think anyone involved in this process is that crazy.
So debt limit has to be in this. This is going to be a massive piece of legislation.
It sounds like it. But let's remember why we are here. When they passed the tax cuts the first time, they did it on budget reconciliation, which requires that the deficit go down over 10 years. To do that, they made them sunset with the full expectation that they would be brought back. So it was a complete nonsense lie that the deficit was going to come down. And here we are again dealing with it. But now it's much worse because we have inflation. It's much harder to deal with deficits. And the situation for the speaker is much tighter politically. Both economically and politically, things are much, much worse than they were last time.
Maura, you mentioned Chip Roy. Is there a Democrat for every Chip Roy that Mike Johnson can work with here?
I don't think it'll be that easy. It'd be nice to think that, but it won't be. There are some Democrats, though, who have expressed, getting rid of the debt ceiling altogether. So, I mean, Trump could find allies there and convince them to work with Mike Johnson on a plan that gets Trump what he wants, which is getting rid of the debt ceiling, but also getting a plan that does reduce the deficit, but gives tax breaks to people that, Trump has shown in the past that he prefers to do so with, and thinking that that's going to create the economy that's going to lower gas prices, lower grocery costs, and open up housing. But will that come to fruition? I'm not sure.
Well, it's interesting you say that because we're looking at the potential for votes as late as April, as early as February. That's the timeline that Mike Johnson rolled out there. That's not possible, is it?
Doesn't feel possible.
I mean, they have all year to do this.
Well, they got to do the debt ceiling sooner or else we hit the ledge.
Sure, in terms of Trump tax cuts, but yes, of course.
The Trump tax cuts, I think, will take longer, probably. And they're probably going to have to split this up. I think this one big, beautiful bill thing is a Trump fantasy that is not going to happen. But in terms of who would benefit from the tax cuts, you have only to look at the tableau of people pictured at the inauguration. Those are the people that are going to benefit. There are a bunch of billionaires, and they're going to do extremely well from these tax cuts. But to get the cuts necessary to make the far right happy enough and to get to within the budget parameters of reconciliation, they're going to have to cut things that are incredibly hard, and that means really taking it out on poor people, Medicaid, SNAP, that kind of thing.
So was this a good experience or not for the Speaker's office to have everybody in one room? They're all in the Donald J. Trump dining hall today for 9 to 5. It was like an 8-hour shift. Is that helpful for the Speaker of the House to get everyone together at the same time.
Internally, it is helpful to get morale going and for people to bond. And a lot of the times that's what these retreats are for, is for members to get to know each other a little better on a personal level, introducing their families to each other and, talking about their kids, going for a round of golf. I mean, we see that being, maybe on the outside, it seems frivolous, but actually on the inside, that's how people get relationships that will help them, whether they're working on a committee together or, hey, we really need you to get on board with this vote. What could we do to help you? They'll be able to have those conversations and see what members' priorities are. But it's a good bonding experience. So, yes, it is beneficial. Will it produce a bill that will make everybody happy and be that one big, beautiful bill? No, but it will help them work together better in the future.
Last retreat like this, really a confusing situation because the memo doesn't clarify exactly what programs will be impacted. We do know that there'll be some sort of a washing, though, if this is allowed to go forward. And again, a judge has halted this. They must be aligned with presidential priorities, these spending programs here, when it comes to immigration, foreign aid, DEI. How many of them would survive that criteria, do you think?
It's hard to say because it's based on what Trump's policies are, and they're matching those up against that to say if they violate his policies.
EOs that are only a week old.
Correct. And so it's really, again, I think the problem with today's announcement was that it just created chaos. President Trump had come out with this, DOGE entity, right? That was just to look at government efficiency. So is that not happening still? I mean, why wouldn't you wait and let that kind of process play out rather than make this decision and upend our economy in a lot of ways? You just threw a lot of confusion. People are very afraid and confused and scared about what that means for them. And so I don't understand the thinking here of using the political capital, because I think a lot of Americans would agree, yes, we need to have an audit on our spending. Our government spending is out of control. Great. That's a winning message for Republicans to go on. But when you do this, like the actions that were taking place today, that really shortens your argument. It really belittles it because it doesn't stand as strong as what people would agree with.
Yeah.
But doing it in this way and so haphazardly, it's a disservice.
We're going to get some pretty interesting, if I could use that term, confirmation hearings in the next couple of days when you consider Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., and Kash Patel. On Sunday on Meet the Press on NBC, Senator Lindsey Graham had this to say about Donald Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence, the former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard.
I tend to vote for almost everybody at both parties, but I want to see how the hearing goes. Why did you go to Syria? What did you do regarding Assad? Why do you think Edward Snowden should be held as a hero? I certainly don't. We'll see how the hearing goes. But in her favor, Richard Burr is going to introduce her, and he's one of my dearest friends. So we'll see.
We're hearing some 15 Republican senators are prepared to vote no. Can she even clear committee? There's a majority of one on that Intelligence Committee.
Not if that continues. She's definitely not going to get out of committee. But think about how Trump has been handling this. They sat her at the inauguration next to the CEO of TikTok, a company that the U.S. Congress has decided is basically a Chinese spy agency. Yeah. They put her next to it. So they're really sticking it in the face of the senators when they do this. But I want to make clear she's not the only one. RFK Jr. Is a profound threat to public health. There are all kinds of diseases circulating right now, including avian flu, that could turn into a pandemic. Putting that guy in charge of our public health would be an incredibly dangerous move. And it's on a knife's edge, the Senate.
Well, we heard from Caroline Kennedy today, and we know that many members of the Kennedy family are not in support of his politics. Caroline Kennedy putting up a letter that will be submitted to the committee that refers to RFK Jr. as a predator. Does he need to address things like the polio vaccine in his opening remarks to be approved?
I think he's going to have to address this from Caroline Kennedy. Yeah. I think that's going to come up. I mean, obviously it's being submitted, and that's a huge question mark over his head. You already have Senator Bill Cassidy, who has expressed discomfort with this choice. So has Senator Mitch McConnell. And so when you're faced with these very big questions over him, that's going to have to be addressed almost, I think, if not in his opening statements, very well short after.
We're out of time, but is there a world in which Mitch McConnell votes yes on RFK Jr.? No way?
I highly doubt it.
There you have it. Maura Gillespie and Matt Bennett, great panel and a great conversation.